Hi, everybody. This is James Van Praagh, and welcome to Life After Death and Beyond. I'm here without Kelly White tonight because Kelly is in Chicago going to do some studies for her credentials, for her therapy credentials. But I'm going to tell you all that I'm here with one. I'm a big fan of this gentleman who is inspired millions of people, I'm going to say. And he is, I'm just going to introduce him, Mark Ireland, everybody. Mark, hello there.
Hey, James. I'm
Hi,
happy
Mark.
to be here tonight. I'm doing
Mark
great.
is my co-founder of Helping Parents Heal, an organization which helps, can I say, millions of parents who've lost children. Would you say all over the world, Mark?
Yeah, well, we've got, I think, about 35,000 members now. We have 170 odd chapters or affiliates around the world. And then, we have a conference every other year that draws about 1,100 people. So I'm sure with the turnstile over the years, since we're over a decade old, maybe it is in the millions. I'm not sure. I mean, there's a lot of people that have seen videos and things too that maybe haven't joined, but you're probably within the range.
I bet. So Mark, gosh, the lineage Mark has, his father was a very well-known and very well-respected, and I think one of the most talented psychics in the world, except for Edgar Cayce. I think he's up there with Edgar Cayce. And Richard Ireland, who was pretty amazing, who had an eye operation when he was younger. Isn't that right? And they patched his eyes up. Is that how the story goes?
Yeah. So really the first coming out party for him as far as this ability was when he was 5 years old. He was born cross-eyed and he lived in rural Ohio. So they took him to the Columbus Children's Hospital for corrective surgery on his eyes. After the surgery was completed, his eyes were cupped and bandaged, and they had him actually restrained to a bed. And this nurse felt sorry for him and said she would let him up if he promised not to mess with the bandages. And he said, okay, I won't touch them. And she let him up. She went on her rounds, came back to find him bouncing a ball against the wall and catching it, and thought, oh my God, he's taken the bandages off, but he hadn't. That was even more shocking. So she brought in some doctors to check this kid out and say, look at this. And then they started doing experiments with him. Like they put him in his bed and then had one doctor stand at the foot of the bed and the other in the doorway. The one in the doorway would ask who was standing in front of him, and he would get it right repeatedly. So that's when they kind of knew. And then, it was, I think, probably an ongoing occurrence within the household for him to make predictions and do different things. I know he would always.
Were the doctors able to tell what it was? I mean, they probably never seen something like it. Did they say psychic in those days?
I don't really know. I've talked to my grandmother. I actually interviewed her about a lot of this. She said she actually saw some of this in him as early as age 3.
Sure.
And I think that was more like Grandpa's coming. And then, they didn't have a phone or anything. Grandpa would show up, within 5 or 10 minutes, that kind of a thing. But I don't really know the terminology that they used back then. It would have been pretty interesting to be a fly on the wall there.
Right. And Mark, how was your childhood growing up with your dad being so psychic?
To me, it was normal. I just thought, well, this is my life. Dad knows all this stuff and you can't get away with things. And, that's just how it is. Wow. It wasn't, until I grew up and, a few years later, talked to other kids and found out that they were all interested in, my dad and what he could do and asking me a lot of questions and things. But I appreciated my dad and his gift. I mean,
he's just my dad.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just felt like at times, that he would, you couldn't do things you wanted to do because he'd thwart them. But it was harder on my brother because my parents split when I was 11, but my brother was almost 10 years older. So he had to suffer through all the teen years with my dad, when people were buying him beer when he was underage and that getting stopped, and him drag racing and that getting stopped and all that kind of stuff.
And how old was your dad when he passed over?
He's only 59.
Young, very
young. I've outlived him.
Yeah, wow. And I often believe that it's as you do. I think the lineage passes on. And you, I got to say, I know you're not going to admit this, but you're also very psychic yourself, right? Would you say you're psychic or medium mystic?
Yeah, it's sporadic with me. I can't say that I've dedicated, focused, intent on doing it on a regular basis, but I am more interested in it now, I think. But it has popped up from time to time.
What kind of work did you get? You got involved in business for a while. What kind of business were you involved in?
Well, yeah, I got married at a young age, had a couple of kids, went to college, got a degree, and then went into business, initially sales and then management. most different careers, but initially in auto parts, and then later on in the print media marketing world, advertising, different things like that. Most of my career was in sales management and leadership positions, VP, regional VP type roles, national VP once. But yeah, that's very left brain kind of work. Although
Left brain, and then, and as your first book, Soul Shift, wonderful book, have it in my library. Your life had a big change. Tell everybody about the change that occurred and what happened.
yeah, that was really a catalyst for me to shift direction in my life, and get into the what I think is the most important part of my life and why I'm actually here, my purpose. But our youngest son, Brandon, unexpectedly passed at the age of 18. And so that kind of obviously rattled me. It's the hardest thing any parent could go through. But it did immediately, like the first thing that came to mind was remembering all the evidence I'd seen from my dad. Because even though back then he was doing demonstrations like in the 60s and 70s, you wouldn't even use the term medium really then in public venues or secular venues or TV. It would be psychic. And even that was a stretch because like if you didn't say you were a mentalist, then it's like, oh, you're full of crap, But I grew up seeing him do psychic demonstrations, but the mediumship would just pop through sometimes instantaneously, like, oh, with very specific messages. I just met a man last week. In fact, he told me a story about my dad doing a psychic demonstration, then popping through with a secret nickname that he had been called by his grandmother when he was a child, and then the guy's he's like shocked, and then my dad's like, well, your grandmother Maria just wanted to say hi and that she loves you. So I saw and remembered those kinds of things as a kid, and that was the first thing that I thought of after I learned that my son had passed. A lot of people have to rely on blind faith, but I didn't. I was afforded that luxury of having seen the evidence firsthand many, many times over the years, and knowing that we are a soul.
And you had an amazing experience with your uncle right after your son passed. Tell people about that. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that was like 3 days after. So I had already asked my uncle for help because he had similar abilities to my dad, and asked if there was anything he could. He asked if he could do anything, and I just said, if you can get a message or any kind of communication, I'd really appreciate it. And it was the third day afterward, I was in the mortuary, and we connected by cell phone. And he said, hey, Mark, I've got something to share with you. He said, I tried to connect last night and I couldn't get anything. But this morning I was doing my morning meditation and your dad came to me. And he wanted you to know that he was there for Brandon when Brandon passed, and he helped him adjust. Brandon was a little confused at first, but he helped him cross over and understand what was going on. Brandon wanted you to know that you're the best parents he ever could have had, which is the nice, warm thing we like to hear. But then he gave me the evidence, because at the time we didn't know the cause of death. And then he said, your dad says Brandon's death was caused by a lack of oxygen that caused his blood oxygen levels to drop and his heart to fail. And it was 2 days later, I spoke to the physician who had conducted the autopsy, and she said that your son had a severe asthma attack that drove his blood oxygen levels down and caused cardiac arrest. Wow. So, my uncle giving me that was, as hard as it is to hear, it was evidence that went along with the feel-good statement. And then it was a great comfort to the family. And that was just like the first in a series of dominoes to fall to kind of pull me back into this field and get engaged, way more than I'd ever been really in my life.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes that. I with thousands of parents I've worked with, and it really is a catalyst in many respects where that the child passes, which I think is the hardest lesson in the human world. The human experience, I think, is one of the hardest lessons. And it really can push or catalyst to a parent to get into the spiritual path, on their spiritual path, write books, start organizations. I mean, it is an amazing catalyst, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it is. It's for all the pain that I suffered, I would just say, I think of how much good has been done because of that. I know that I've had people write to me or talk to me or at the conferences and even through emails to say, you saved my life. I'm not saying that to brag, but I mean, you're doing something important if you get that, somebody tells you that.
And you also, Mark, you also want to share that incredible experience, like your uncle gave you, that awareness, like the conscience survives death. Oh my gosh, what a gift that is to give a parent.
Yes. Yeah. And that's why that's why the organization Helping Parents Heal even exists, because there's no other organization that really allows for the open discussion of spiritual experiences and afterlife evidence. And we embrace that fully, but we're non-dogmatic. We're not tied to any religion or any specific path. We're open to all people from all backgrounds. We're just—
Which I applaud you for, because I worked with many organizations and they couldn't have me because I was a medium, or it was very strange. And you're the one organization that is just open, which helps people in so many ways. Helping Parents Heal, I think, is one of the top one to help parents. I really do believe so. I went to a workshop in last August. All right. And it was just an amazing experience. We had over 1,000 people, I think, right?
Yeah, 1,100. We were at the hotel's capacity.
Yeah, that's
but
great.
Yeah, it's interesting the bad rap that mediumship gets sometimes, or why there's that connotation to it when it's a spiritual gift. My dad viewed it as one of the gifts of the spirits mentioned by the Apostle Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. So it's funny to me that you'll have people from a more fundamentalist Christian background that have trouble with it, but yet they don't even look at their own scripture to see where it's supported. Those kinds of gifts are supported.
And I've run into a lot of born again Christians who lost children. They believe the mediumship after that. They go, oh, this is from God, whatever. So tell us about, so after your son passed over and you had that message from your uncle, how did you get started then into doing more about mediumship and the work involved in it?
Well, my interest just really peaked. I started reading more books about mediumship and medium research that's been done and things like that. But I think the next domino to fall was about 3 weeks later. I was watching a news excerpt on the NBC affiliate in Phoenix, and it was showing this research being done at the University of Arizona at the time.
Gary Schwartz, right?
Yeah, Schwartz, yeah. And then they had a medium under blinded conditions reading for some people that she couldn't see, and it was Alison Dubois before she became well known. Sure. But I was really impressed with her work. I thought, wow, she's very specific and a lot of information being shared. And then they debriefed with the sitters afterwards, and everything was pretty much right on the money. And I thought, I'd love to get a reading from her, and I'd love to be in that lab. And the very next day, well, both things ultimately happened. Within a year, I was a sitter in that lab. But the very next day after seeing that, a man named Jerry Conser from Dallas, Texas, who had known my father, he called me and he said, hey, Mark, I know what you've been through, and I know someone who may be able to help you. Her name's Alison Dubois, and here's a phone number you can call to get a reading. So it's like, okay, Dad, I get it. Thank you.
Really?
And then I didn't get that reading till August that year, but I guess it was a week before that. I thought it was 2, but it was 1 week before. A gentleman who knew my dad gave me a box, and inside the box was all these 8.5 by 11 type pages. And it said, Your Psychic Potential, A Guide to Psychic Development by Richard Ireland. I'm like, where'd you get this? He goes, well, your dad gave it to me before he passed because you were out of state at the time. And I said, well, it's been 12 years. Why are you giving this to me now? He says, I don't know. I just feel like I'm supposed to. Then I have the reading with Alison, and one of the first things she says to me is, your father's here, and he showed me a book, but I think it's his book, but he's handing it to you to take forward. Does that make sense to you? And in 2011, I got it published.
I have 3 copies. It's a great book. I use
published.
Yep. He's so proud of you. Whew, wow. You're carrying on his work. Wow. Wow. I'm going to cry. So you got that published. And
yes.
Then you involved with, tell us more then. You got more involved with the lab or mediumship?
Well, I had a bunch of different things happen. I actually, in Soul Shift, was kind of documenting my journey after that. So I talked about those things.
Yes.
My wife had an experience. It was a direct contact experience. 6 months after Brandon's passing, we had gone on a 7-day cruise to celebrate Brandon's graduation from high school. But since he couldn't go with us physically, we brought his best friend and his brother.
Right.
But the day we got back, my wife's sitting at the foot of our bed, and she feels a presence with her and sees a shadow figure out of her peripheral vision. She knows it's Brandon. And then I come barging into the room and kind of mess things up. But it lasted for, I don't know, maybe it was a half a minute or something. But she, it was wonderful. But what was really confirming about that was the next day she got a call from a man named James Linton. He was a friend of ours who we'd gotten to know only because he'd been hiking on the mountain the same day as Brandon. I didn't mention this, but Brandon passed on the side of mountains behind our home in Scottsdale. and this man had hiked, and his group tried to help, but they got there too late. He later connected with us through the online obituary, left his phone number. It turns out he was a musician. He had an in-home recording studio. Before we left for the cruise, he asked if he could borrow Brandon's bass guitar because he was finishing a song and he didn't have a bass. And we said, sure. Now, James was left-handed and Brandon was right-handed, so he had to play this thing upside down. Okay, so I told you about Susie's experience with Brandon directly there. The next day, James calls and he says, hey, Susie, I have something to tell you, but I don't know how to tell you. And he says, well, I was recording this song and I felt another presence in the studio with me. And I saw a shadow figure out of my peripheral vision. And I saw flashes of white light. I thought I was hallucinating, but then I went to get a drink of water. I got food. I took a shower, but every time I came back, it got stronger and stronger. And he eventually just said, okay, Brandon, what do you want? And then he felt guided at that point to redo the lyrics to this song and the bass line. And he said, it's the best song I've ever written, but I didn't write it.
Wow.
So the whole thing, about the channeled song, to me, what's most compelling is just the mere fact he had an identical experience to Susie 1 day later, and he knew nothing about her experience. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. Well, they come through in so many different ways. The magic of that world and how they can manipulate things to happen is just mind blowing from this 3-dimensional world, isn't it?
Yeah, and then I got a reading from Linda Williamson in London, England. She's retired now, but she had actually read for John Edward, and she's the one that solved his secret code that he had established with his mother.
Rose, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no, John Edward's one was The Guiding Light, because that was his mother's favorite soap opera.
That's right.
And so what she had said to John was, I've got your mother here, and she says she's the guiding light in your life. Oh, so anyhow, I got this reading from her, and she was very prophetic, because she said, you're going to have a huge organization form around you, and all you have to do is just be yourself and tell your truth. It will just organically build and grow. So, and she says, it doesn't always happen in the time we expect it to. Now, this was 2004, and I was like, by 2005, 6, where is this thing? Well, now it's 2025 and it's there.
Oh, wow.
And then the last one that was in the book was, I was at the lab, the Human Energy Systems Lab at the U of A. Yes. And the Discovery Channel was there to record this session with Lori Campbell. Who's
turned it down. They asked me to do that and I didn't do it. So I understand. Yeah.
But that was a very interesting and compelling reading too. But a lot of the messages I just kept getting was about that, this is my mission in life, and this is going to be, I'm going to help other people heal. Even I remember Lori saying, whoever this man is, he's writing a book, and it's about the person on the other side, the male here that I have. And he's taking a very complex subject and writing it in such a way so that it's understandable for the average person, which was exactly the approach that I took and what my goal was with that book.
Soul Shift, yeah. And Lori Campbell, great medium. Yeah, I've worked with Lori. I've known her for a long time. Great medium. Yeah, Lori Campbell. So, wow. And then you went with, we have a lot in common. Because tell me about sitting in the closet. Because I tell my students, sit in the stillness of your being by going into a walk-in closet. And you have a very similar story.
So that was, and I don't know what your story is, but I'll tell you mine. This is actually, this may have been the first thing that happened after Brandon passed, even before my uncle gave me his validation. If not, it was within the week.
Right.
But I know I wanted to connect directly. Yeah. And so I had a walk-in closet. I shut the door so it was dark. I sat on the floor, and then I quietly just meditated and asked to connect. And I tried to clear my mind of all thoughts, which is hard for me to do, but I was able to do it. And while I was sitting there, it took a little while, but then Brandon's face scrolled across like this is a movie screen or whatever. And he was smiling and joyful and actually glowing. And that made me feel great. But then right after that, I saw a symbol. It was a cross with an oval loop at the top. And I'd seen those, but I didn't really know what they were. So it required me afterward to go Google it to find out what is this. Finding out that it's an Ankh, which is the oldest cross of human history, dating back about 5,000 years to the ancient Egyptians. And the symbology was the lower portion represents physical life with the oval loop representing eternal life. So I felt I got a coded message that was really meaningful to me because I didn't know what it meant. I had to find out what it meant.
Yeah. Which is you. You like research. That's probably pretty good. He knew that.
And being a little analytical too, you know.
And then, so when I've had my students I call it sitting in the stillness of your being, and they go in the closet, if you will, and there's a closet, I sit right back over here. That's where I go. It's a walk-in closet. I'll sit there and sit in the quiet, and just like you, and then the spirit will come through very clearly when you let go of things. Have you had more experiences like that since then?
Yes. You know, I had one vivid dream that is more real than waking reality with him. I described that in Soul Shift.
Yeah.
But as far as other psychic kind of stuff, I've had a number of different things happen. One that was interesting involved Linda Williamson, because my sister was on her deathbed in 2006, and my mother was in a wheelchair next to my sister's bed.
Wow.
And I saw my sister was kind of writhing around. It was hard to watch. And my mom, I could tell, was getting really depressed and started rolling her wheelchair away because she couldn't take it. So I took like a step toward her. I was going to go comfort her. But then right at that minute, I just had this feeling that my dad was there. And my dad was letting me know that they weren't upset. They had a party planned for Robin, my sister. Mm-hmm. So I told my mom that. And that made her feel better. And I didn't really know if that was true or not. But, you know, I shared what I got, which is what you're supposed to do, right?
Right. That's exactly.
And then I had emailed some people to talk about my sister's condition, and Linda Williamson was one of them. And I just said, you know, I did a laying on of hands healing of my sister, you know, and it was actually hovering above. I never touched her, but she was in an altered state at the time. But then she kind of woke up later and she said, they said what you did helped. I'm like, oh, who's they? You know, but anyhow, I told Linda about the healing. And then she wrote back and she said, well, the healing isn't always to save the person. It can be to make their transition easier. But she says, as I write this, I have a man here. I think it's your father. And he wants you to know that they're planning a party for your sister.
That's great. That's great.
So that was pretty good. But I think my coup de grace happened. I got invited to speak at the Golden Gate Spiritualist Church in San Francisco for a 3-year period. Each year, I would bring Tina Powers, a medium from Tucson that I know and respect, a good friend. She would do readings.
Was it Reverend Alfred O'Connor at that point?
No, it was. I'm trying to think of his name.
I remember Alfred O'Connor used to be the Reverend up there. Yeah,
that must have been a while back.
Yeah, well, I'm old. Yes, it was.
I'm not a spring chicken myself. But the founder of the church was Florence Becker. She founded it in 1924. She passed in 1970. And then the church has carried on after that. So this one time I'm going there, and Tina, the medium friend, she's like, hey, Mark, I think you're going to get a message to share with the congregation. Will you share it? I'm like, sure. If I get something, I'll share it. She kept hounding me about this. And even the day walking in the church, she's like, Mark, if you get a message, will you share it? I'm like, yes, I will, you know. And so I went into their healing room. It was about 30 minutes before I'm supposed to talk. And I sit down on a bench to a piano or an organ. And I just tried to quiet my mind, really more to prepare for my talk. But while I was sitting there, my mind went blank. I mean, I almost never get that, where it's just blank. Mm-hmm. While I was sitting there, his name popped in, Max. And then right after that, Maxine. And I thought, oh, maybe it's Maxine, not Max. Now, I didn't hear the name. I didn't see the name. It came in just like a thought or an idea. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that worked, how that's you get it, but anyhow.
That's exactly right.
So then I go do my talk. And at the end, I said, okay, Tina made me promise that if I got anything, I'd share it with the congregation. So I have to ask if the names Max or Maxine mean anything to anyone here. And the pastor of the church, Dell, was in the D-E-L, Dell. He said, well, Max and Maxine were twins born to the church founder, Florence Becker, and they were delivered stillborn and grew up in spirit. He says, that's a secret only known to a few longtime board members. It's a secret. And so I'm like, wow. I mean, 2 names, not just one, and they're not common names. And look at the connection. He says, I think we know who is here right now. Then afterwards, he says, I want to take you upstairs and show you something. And he showed me this painting. It was a landscape with a long winding road. And he says, see the 2 little figures at the end of the road? That's Max and Maxine. So I think it was a painting done by Florence Becker. But anyhow, so I could see then why Tina pushed me to say that, because it was so subtle. I could have just said, that's nothing. That's the one thing that I've come to realize when I have had those impressions. We're so blasted with loud music and televisions and media and everything else that communication is very subtle.
Very
At least for
subtle.
me, it is.
It's very subtle, Mark. No, it's like a feather coming from the heavens, and if you go after it, it'll go away. But if you put your palm straight out, it can more likely just fall on your palm. And so I need to ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but have you thought about developing your mediumship at all?
Yeah, I think I would like to a greater extent. I don't know that I'm going to put up my flag to go to work doing it, but
Right.
for friends or just to test it. I have done some test readings for friends and have had some success. I think I've just had so many interests, especially when I was in business. It was just a matter of time and energy and focus. And I think I kind of taken more of this journalistic research approach to the books and to the stuff. And the minute that I say, okay, I've been studying to be a medium, and now I am one, so I can't really do that anymore as an objective type, reporter or journalist. But that's okay. I mean, there may come a point in time where I say, if I could be good enough at it, where the responsibility of it.
If I was in Scottsdale, I'd push you in a development circle with me because you're very talented. You really are. But I understand the conditions got to be just right. But I know your dad and your son, a lot of people in spirit, but you're doing such great work. Tell everybody about your work with mediums and how you find those who are not are fraudulent mediums, what to look for in readings. Share people about that, your research in that.
Yeah,
I find
I
it
think it
fascinating.
was within a year after Brandon's passing, we had a therapist have us meet another couple. Their son had just drowned in a lake. It was a really sad story, and they were really suffering. And so they asked some questions about how we coped and improved. And one of the things we said is, it's not the end all be all, a good mediumship reading, but can be a very helping, healing balm, And so I talked about that a little bit. Well, I said, if you want to do this, let me know and I'll try and guide you to somebody who's reputable. Well, she got impatient and drove by one of these storefront psychic
Oh,
places,
no.
and she had a horrible experience.
Yeah.
So I just reported that and just said, these things do exist. Not everybody's got the right intentions. Some people are out for money. And that individual said, your son hasn't crossed all the way over. He's stuck in this kind of limbo land.
Oh,
But for $400 more, I can
get them free. Yeah.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So it
awful.
was just, I said, just never go back there, disregard that, and let me get you set up with somebody reputable. So I just shared that because it needs to be said. Now, do I think that's a common thing? No, I really don't. I've seen a lot more deluded people that think they have the ability
Yeah.
than people who are scammers.
Or the ones with the wrong intentions.
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 But I did set up a program where I do test some people to vet them. The reason I did that was because it wasn't for research or anything else. It was just to provide people with a list of reliable people who had at least proven their ability under blind conditions to do a good reading for someone. And when I first, like, Soul Shift came out, people were hounding me like crazy. Who should I see? Who should I
Great book,
see?
by the way. Great book.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
And I knew maybe half a dozen people, but they were like the Allisons, they were celebrity types. They had long wait lists, and some were more expensive than people wanted to pay. And so I thought, there've got to be other good people out there that have the ability that are just lesser known. And that has proven true. I think I've run about 40 people through that in the last 10 years that did well enough to pass. And I've revised the protocols about 4 times.
And what are
And
some
in
of
putting
the
those
questions? What are the things you put them through, the tests that you put them through?
Sure. And I really formulated this with advice from my friend Tricia Robertson, who's with the Scottish Society of Psychical Research,
Right.
and Dr. Emily Williams Kelly of the University of Virginia Division of Perceptual Studies. I had been a test sitter for one of her mediumship studies more than a decade ago. And so I kind of pulled these ideas together to figure out how to do it. And what I do now, because it's been refined, I started with 5 readings, but now I've cut it to 4. The person has to go through 4 blinded readings on Zoom with no video. They're only given the first name of the sitter. And then basically they do a reading for that sitter, and it's recorded. After the recording, the recording is transcribed and then graded by the sitter for accuracy and for evidence. So I used to base it more on the accuracy, but really what I found was you could say, for example, your grandmother loved to cook. Well, that could be accurate, but it's not evidential.
Right.
But if you say your grandmother loved to make lasagna on Christmas,
Right.
and that's true, okay, that's evidential and it's correct. So what I've done, I've shifted it more where it's a third accuracy, a third evidence, and then the third is a subjective grade from the sitter for the overall impression of the evidential nature of the reading. So those are the basic criteria. It gets more, minute than that, but what I'm finding now is this is pretty effective. The people I got coming through now are doing a great job. I mean, the ones that are passing, and then the people that can't do it, they move on. They could reapply in a year.
Okay. And how many are involved in this right now? How many possibly? A lot, huh?
I've got a wait list.
Really?
Because I have an assistant. She's a volunteer. She lives in Chicago, but she helps me with setting up the readings and then doing the grading. I do the grading. She does the grading. So we kind of share the duty right now because we have a wait list. It's probably more than 10 deep of people that want to be tested. And we had a bigger list of sitters, people that wanted to do the test sittings, but some of them, I think we found some are better at it than others. Yeah. I think part of the problem is people want the free reading, but they don't want to do the back end work, or they're either too generous or too skeptical with their grading. You've got to be objective and open-minded.
Very closed-minded, or they want to hear specific information. And it doesn't work always that way.
No. It's like I was telling somebody today, it's like we want to go to spirit with what we want, and we want to control the process, but it doesn't work that way. We can ask and want what we want, and hopefully we get what we want, but it's going to be what I've heard it said, Mark's going to get what he needs, not what he wants.
Well, it's funny you say that, because anytime I teach my students and I sit, I always send out a thought or have them send out, what's the greatest need? May I meet the greatest need of the spirit world and of my sitter. And that seems to work because it brings up that vibration up to a higher level. That's right. Now, do you have a list of these accredited mediums on your site?
Yeah. Actually, I have a separate website just for that. Okay. It's got over 40 people now, but I've been doing it for 10 years.
And what is that website so we can put that up?
If they go to my website, markirelandauthor.com, they'll find a link to it. And it just says certified mediums link on my site. You'll find that link right there. It's markirelandauthor.com.
Okay, we'll put that link up. And have you heard of Bob Olson? There we are. You've heard of Bob Olson, yeah?
I know Bob. He interviewed me once a few years ago. His approach is a little different. I think he looks for testimonials for them, but I don't know that he tests them. At least that's the last I knew. Maybe he's changed his process.
I don't know. But, a couple of things I want to ask you because I have notes for you. Okay. So, share with the audience here, what would you say that the healing impacts of afterlife communication? Like what does it help to promote with the healing for people?
Well, I think, for some people, they may have a belief in the afterlife or a hope of it, but it gives them an affirmation of that this is real, it's just mind blowing to them. There's in my neighborhood, there's a couple people who recently passed, and the wife of the one man who passed, I shared one of the books with her and then talked to her, and she says, you could just see like this weight lifted off of her, we live in a world that's really preaching materialism and physicalism and the notion that the brain is consciousness and the brain is it. And when the brain dies, that's it. But these phenomena show that that's not the case, that there is a soul and we're just in this body for experience for a period of time. And that soul goes on. And if someone learns that in a way that they can actually digest and process and see, maybe I don't know how this works, but I know that it's real. And that I know that message is from my loved one. It's just, the There's nothing like it, really. It's just so comforting and so helpful. And, as importantly, it helps people go on and finish their lives and not take their own life or go into a deep, dark hole and never dig out, because then they can't finish the purpose they're here for.
Have you had, I call them professional grievers, and how do you help people not become professional grievers?
I'm not sure I know what you mean, but I think I know what you mean.
So like for instance, if someone, and everybody grieves differently, of course, and in different ways, but are there some people you find that stay in that space and they will not budge, and they'll stay
Yes.
there for their whole lives? I call them
Very
professional.
few, but I have. I think, our organization, Helping Parents Heal, has helped a lot of folks. The vast majority, come through there and do much better and get on a healing path. But there are some people that cling to that, and there are different reasons for that. Some are psychological. Sometimes people, they feel like if they stop, if they live a joyful life again or feel happy, they're not serving their loved one that passed. They're not honoring them,
And
which
it's
is,
quite the opposite, isn't it, from the spirit?
yeah, it's the other way. They
They
want
don't
them.
want them to be like that. They
Right.
want them to live life, and yeah, it's really
Others have these deep-seated feelings of guilt or anger. I knew one man, his daughter was killed in a car accident from a drunk driver in Texas somewhere. And so he just could never get over that anger. And he actually went to the prison where the guy was that had killed his daughter in the crash. And, I think he went there to talk to him and maybe hopefully forgive the guy to whatever extent he could. But from my understanding, he couldn't, all he could do is just go in there and cry. And I haven't talked to that gentleman for a long time, but he was one that was having a real hard time, but because of that lingering anger. Others will feel guilt, like, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that. I could have stopped it. And that's rarely true.
shoulda, coulda,
Usually,
woulda. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. But some people blame themselves. And I think suicide's one of those things that seems to be harder for people to cope with than other things, and murders as well. But the suicide thing, but people carry a lot of guilt oftentimes because of the suicide thing, because they'll think, I should have seen the signs, or what did I do wrong as a parent? What could I have done differently, and that sort of thing.
Very, very true. Very true. How has this worked? Just curious. How has it changed your life? How has it changed your spiritual perspective, your everyday life? Has it changed it greatly? Or just curious.
I'm still the same person. I think I always
The same person,
had
but
these, I had
spiritual.
these, I think I had these beliefs and these thoughts about the reasons why I'm here. I just don't think I'd really found my path, earlier in my life. But I also think, like, well, Linda Williamson said this too, that my years in business were not a waste, that I touched people there too. And I honed my skills of communication and learning how to write and how to think critically and all these things that would help me later on
That's your
to be,
foundation. That was your foundation.
yeah, to be able to present and talk to people and even do a show like this and talk in a way that's understandable and confident in what I have to share. So, but I think it just shifted to where it's such a joy for me to be engaged in this kind of stuff, to share with people, to help people through what I call my testimony, my experiences that have helped me and my family. And I've seen so many other people helped to know that you are here for a purpose, and you want to find that purpose and live to achieve it and go through those things. And life does present challenges, and there is suffering with life. That's part of the nature of it. But we can come out of that suffering on the other side stronger, better than we were before. And if we didn't go through those things, just like if I hadn't had my son pass, I would probably have never done any of this,
You helped millions of people, and you wouldn't have done that because of that. So maybe that was set up before you all came into the incarnation. That
Yeah.
might have been set up to help these people.
Yeah. I mean, I tend to think there could be some truth in that. I mean, I know that.
Oh, I know it, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's true. I also want to you've heard me say this before, but and the soul, I really believe that like 70% of the soul is outside the body and only 30% is here. So most of us are up here, and that's that higher self, if you will. And I'm just curious, like if I asked you how to change your life, because from my work as a medium over the many 40 years, I find it hard not to be mindful of it every day. In that, when I meet somebody, how I behave with someone, what do you talk about? That thoughts are things and words have power. Do you think like in those terms or no?
No, I do.
Good or bad? I'm just curious.
No, I do. I mean, I remember it's funny because I read one of Wayne Dyer's books, and he says in there, thoughts are things. But you know who said that decades earlier? My dad. And I have transcriptions of his trance sessions and things where he said thoughts are things. But no, I do think that, you know, we kind of create our own reality through the mentality of our thoughts. And my understanding of the other side, it's even more that way because it's more of a thought world
It's a
than
mental
this.
world. Yeah, it's a mental. It's a
It's
physical.
almost, you know, instantaneously manifesting stuff over there, where here you can manifest stuff and it can happen, come together. You know, it may not be as quick or as easy, but
It takes a little while because it's a slow vibration here. But
yeah,
it'll
yeah.
happen. It'll happen.
But I identify with that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know because I've met you, so I know you. I know you do. Met some great people in your organization, helping parents heal. So it's a great organization, and
Yeah,
people should
thanks.
definitely, if they need that, they should look that up. And there's something I want to talk about. Also, you mentioned the 5 pillars of healing. Share with our audience about the 5, in your interpretation, of 5 pillars of healing.
Yeah, that kind of came to me from observing these parents that had come through helping parents heal and seeing, you know, what got them from point A to point B or point Z, really. Um, and so I kind of put these in. I'm not saying these are the only things, but
Right.
these are the things that really stood out to me. And the first one is support from family and friends if you can get it. You know, not everybody has a healthy family situation, but if you do have that, that's a real plus. And some families are loving families, but still they tend to not deal with this kind of thing very well. They don't want to talk about the child that passed, but the parent does, you know. So that kind of thing. The support from family and friends is the first. Second is support and relationships with people who've been through the same thing. We can help with that because we have all, you know, thousands of people who have been, and especially at the conferences, you see the intermingling of the parents and them forming new friendships that are so helpful for the rest of their lives. We've made so many friends too that have had kids pass, and we're like best friends with many, many of them.
Sure.
The third thing is service. And it may not be something people are able to do right away, but after they've healed to a certain point, you know, if they can provide service in some other way to some other people or organizations, whether that be working at a soup kitchen or helping with a cancer research thing or organ donation, or maybe being an affiliate leader for helping parents heal. When you give, it comes back to you. It's just kind of a natural law.
True.
And it helps heal you. When you help others, it heals you too.
Oh, true.
The fourth pillar is, and I touched on this already, really, and they're kind of interrelated: guilt and lack of forgiveness. So people that cling to those feelings of guilt and can't let go or forgive themselves, they get stuck. People who can't forgive someone they're holding accountable, whether it be like an accident situation that I mentioned before, or perhaps a medical doctor that they're blaming or whatever. You know, I'm not saying it's easy, but if you could get to a point where you can and put that behind you and forgive and move on, it will heal you. And then the last thing really is the main thing we've been talking about, which is the afterlife evidence. It's learning about, and maybe some people who have been raised either in an agnostic or atheistic home, you know, they would have no idea about any of this, but maybe, or people from fundamentalist religion too, you know, start by reading books about near-death experiences like Dr. Bruce Grayson's work. Read about, you know, the mediumship world, James books, my books. There's so many other phenomena, you know, the reincarnation research from Dr. Ian Stevenson and then subsequently Jim Tucker. There are YouTube videos about all these things too. And there are still many other phenomena that point to this, like deathbed visions, people who are on their dying bed and they see loved ones who have already passed. They're communicating with them. Some of the most compelling ones are like cases where someone's dying and they see somebody who is assumed to be alive, but then the rest of the family finds out had actually passed a week before or whatever, you know, things like that. So I think reading about that, watching videos about that, and then, if and when they're ready, they could get a mediumship reading from somebody who's been vetted. They can learn to develop the means to try and connect on their own, directly through meditative practices and things. I know Suzanne Wilson, who we talked about earlier, offers some instruction on that. I think Suzanne Giesman does. You probably do as well.
I have a school online. Yeah, I have my JVP school. And I want to ask you: has Brandon come back to you lately that you're aware of, unconscious?
Well,
I know he's always with you, but are you conscious of it?
Yeah. So I actually had my wife serve as a test sitter for one of these test readings yesterday or 2 days ago because I didn't have a sitter. I needed to get it done. So I had to take the Zoom account, change the name to Marie, and which is her middle name, and then change the photograph to a landscape photo. And then she conducted that, but it was pretty compelling. Yeah. So I don't really seek readings a lot. I know so many medium friends; they'll just spontaneously give me stuff.
Well, he'll just come through you. Won't he just come through sometimes, like thoughts of him and write things
down?
They do.
They do. I mean, I feel connected to him. I think about him, pray for him every single day, and send him thoughts of love. It's different when, because when it's coming to you, you're not. It's hard to explain, but it's like you don't know whether it's just you thinking it or if it's really them.
Or it's them. Yes, I know. I can't read myself, but yes, I understand what you're saying.
That's where if somebody else gives it to you, then you feel, okay, I can trust it. Or if they say, hey, I know you were doing this and you did feel him, that's helpful too. But I know that he's connecting with me, often. It's just in a subtle way. And I don't.
Working through you, but go on.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I need those kinds of things as much, now at this stage of life. Right. I feel connected to him. And it's like I tell people too, it's like, the relationship doesn't have to end. It's just going to be different, because they're different,
like in a foreign country.
Yeah. It's funny. That reminds me of another thing that I said one time. I was at a woman's house and she had gone to see George Anderson. Mm-hmm. And she says, oh, you want to hear this recording of it? It was really good, blah, blah, blah. I said, sure. And I said, and she says, the one thing I don't know, I just, I'm having a hard time with is thinking about the fact that I'll never see him again, in his physical body. I said, well, just think of it this way. Don't think about it like he's gone forever. Just think like he's on the other side of the world, like he's in Australia. She goes, that's exactly what George Anderson said to me.
Hello. That's true. Wow. And just before we close here, we have a lot of things in common. I was telling you earlier before we got on. And one of the things I heard about Mae West, your father, your incredible father, Richard, used to sit with Mae West at her place. And I think, was it LA or was it?
Yeah, it was the Ravenswood in Beverly Hills.
I've been, a friend of mine lived right next door. And she used to sit with a good friend of mine who's now passed, Leslie Flint, who was a physical medium.
Oh, yeah.
About Leslie, yeah.
Yep.
And there was a man that was talking about, it's something about your dad and something about Robert Fisher, who was a writer with Arthur Marx, Groucho's son. They were writers together. And he went to Mae West's apartment in Ravenswood, and your father was there and gave a reading. I heard that. It was on YouTube. And did you know about that with Robert Fisher and Arthur Marx? Had a reading for your dad at Mae West's apartment?
I don't know if it's the same one. I did find one recently where there was a Hollywood producer or a guy that was in the industry who had gone to Mae West's house and seen my dad's demonstration there.
Robert Fisher was a producer.
Okay, this is somebody else. I forget this guy's name.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'd like to find that one. I'll have to Google it.
Well, the funny thing is I knew Robert Fisher.
Oh,
passed for now. He was very early on in my career up in LA when I would be a writer, and he was the first person I met as a producer writer. He was retired, but he told me some contacts and sort of thing, and he introduced me to my manager at the time, who's now my agent. And I just thought it was so weird that of all the people, Robert Fisher. So yeah, at Mae West's place. It was very, very interesting. And then the other thing was, we have a lot in common here. Suzanne Wilson, of course, a bunch of stuff I was listening to and watching on YouTube. It was like, I know this. This is like coincidence. It's like coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous, right?
Yeah.
So when is your next book coming out?
I'm working on one now.
Because your father won't stop.
Yeah, this one came out about a little over a year ago.
Okay.
Persistence of the Soul. But the one I'm working on now, and the reason why he won't give up on it is because the next one is going to be about what it was like for me to grow up with the father I had.
Oh, because he's like pushing.
Yeah.
Pushing. Boy, is he strong.
Yeah. This gets brought up every time.
Well, he's just such a personality, but you got to do yourself too. But yeah, I mean, it's hard to be in the shadow of that, but you have your own. You're doing such great. I just know he's so proud of you. I mean, it's proud of you for who you are.
I've got stories from so many people from around the world that will be in this book too. So it'll be my stories, but theirs as well. If we have time, I'll tell you one real quick one that's pretty wild. This woman, I was doing a talk a number of years ago, and this woman approached me. She says, "Hey, Mark, my name's Norma Poling." And she gave me a printout of a story. She goes, "I'm going to tell you a story, but here's this. I'm giving it to you in typed format, so you have it to take home. But I saw your dad in 1963, and he, taped and blindfolded his eyes, and he asked us to write questions on pieces of paper. And I was trying to think what question to ask. And she thought, should I ask, will I get my master's degree? Or should I ask, will I have a fourth child?" And she thought, so she just wrote the one about the master's degree and sent it up. Near the end, my dad answered, says, "Yes, you'll get the master's degree." And then she later did get the master's degree, but big deal. Anyhow, she didn't see my dad for another 5 years. 5 years later, she came back, saw him again, taped and blindfolded. And then she's writing a new question this time and sends it up. And when he gets her paper, he says, Norma Poling. "Oh, I see you had that fourth child." That was the thing she thought of 5 years ago and never even wrote down. So it really twists your mind when you think about the nature of time too, doesn't it?
You betcha. You betcha, of course. I mean, and he does enter into that. When I was watching, like a kind of a light altered state, trance state. He goes into that when he does his readings. It was like pretty amazing to watch it. And the last tape of him on YouTube was the Steve Allen show, was it in 1969?
Well, it's actually 71. I initially labeled it 69. Then I found out it was 71. That's probably the best representation I have of him. I do have a few other videos. I have a site dedicated to him. There's a link to it on my site. If you go to my homepage at the bottom left, you'll find a link to all the videos of him.
Oh, great.
So you can find them all in one place. And it's somebody Beaker in Hollywood. Beaker's his last name. He had a story about the time he went to Mae West's house and got a reading from my dad that had a mind-blowing result. I won't tell you about it. So anyone wants to see it, they could find it there below the Steve Allen ones. But those are probably the best. I have a few other clips, but I know he was on like Merv Griffin. He was on Dinah Shore, and a number of other.
Mike
Regis Philbin way back when. But I don't have any of those, and I can't seem to get them. So I'm just happy that I was able to get the Steve Allen one. I have the 16 millimeter film of that.
That's great. And he was very much a skeptic, Steve Allen, very skeptical.
He was. So, when you see his reaction to my dad, that my dad did a good job, because he says, I'm not normally skeptical. And I think he was, aligned with a lot of those hardcore skeptic types.
I turned him down for a reading. I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it. Although I did a great reading with Audrey Meadows, was a good friend of mine, and did really great things. Audrey helped her over, actually. And but Steve, I turned it down because I didn't want to go into a room that was, already preset of not believing. Bad conditions. Yeah. Well, I look forward to your book. And what's going on with the Helping Parents Heal? So people can go online and find the organization.
Yeah, it's helpingparentsheal.org. Yeah. There's always something going on, whether they're meetings at local affiliates. So no matter what city or state you're in, go to the website. If you're looking for a group for support, you can see if there's one near you, and you can go to those meetings. We also have Zoom meetings that are for anyone around the world. So the Zoom meetings, we have a lot of guest speakers and presenters. James has been on and done gallery readings for us before, which was really deeply appreciated.
I'll come back. Yeah.
So, there's a variety of resources. We have caring listeners too. So if somebody really needs to talk to somebody, they can look up the list of caring listeners, pick the one that feels like a fit for you. So there's a lot of resources. There are tons of videos. And then we have the conference every other year. It's just, we're all volunteer pretty much. And it's hard to run those conferences. It's a lot of work, and we don't want to hire anyone because it costs so much that we would be in the red, or we'd have to charge an arm and a leg, and we try and keep it as affordable as we can. That's why we do it in August in Phoenix. It's hot, but it's a nice facility, and it's all under roof and whatnot. But yeah, the next one's in 26. So if you're interested, just keep an eye out, get on the email list. There's a Facebook page you can join to become a member there, and to keep up with everything. So it's there for those who need it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you so much. And really, thank you for all your work. And really, thank you for being you and for the work that you bring to the planet. Really incredible, sir.
Same to you, James. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time. Okay. Bye-bye now.